Externalities. Definition. Externalities can drastically change your view on certain activities. Let's see how we define them and what we should do with them. We will start with a short definition. An externality is an unintended consequence that impacts third parties. It can be an indirect cost or benefit. A great example of an externality is smoking. The people that smoke not only harm their health, but also the health of other people as well. Externalities are not naturally captured by markets. Therefore, you quite often have to create incentives to change or stimulate the behavior of firms and people causing those externalities. It's worth noting that in the case of externalities, the full benefit and the full cost may be to some extent separated. Generally speaking, we have two main types of externalities. The first group is called positive externalities. In the case of positive externalities, a third party gets the unintended benefit. The person receiving the benefit doesn't have to pay for it. A great example of such a positive externality is the nicely organized garden of your neighbor. You don't have to pay for it, but you can enjoy the way the roses look. Externalities can also be negative. We have them when a third party gets an additional cost or harm. This effect was not created intentionally, but rather is a byproduct of another activity. The person or firm creating the negative externality usually gets some sort of benefit, but does not have to suffer the full cost or harm created by its actions. A great example of a negative externality is pollution. It is created by firms producing goods. They did not want to create pollution. It is merely an unintended bad consequence of their actions. Let's look at more examples of positive and negative externalities. When it comes to positive externalities, we have education and healthcare. Both education and healthcare help firms have more productive workers. However, they did not have to pay for this. Another interesting positive externality is connected with bees. Beekeepers use bees to produce honey. Bees, to do that, have to gather nectar from different flowers. Bees, by accident while gathering food, pollinate plants. This in turn increases the crops of farmers located near the bees' hives. That's why many farmers will hire beekeepers to place their hives next to their fields. Now let's move to negative externalities. The first one that is affecting almost everybody is pollution. It is mainly produced by factories and cars. Pollution causes health problems that can result in higher mortality. For example, in Poland, around 10% of all deaths are related to pollution. Moreover, pollution increases the costs of the healthcare system and decreases the IQ of kids. Other examples of negative externalities are smoking and drinking. Both activities harm not only the people performing them, but also the people who are nearby. Last but not least, we have the ultimate negative externality, the CO2 level. It is a byproduct of our civilization that causes global warming. This in turn means lower productivity of land in many places, floods, and other weather disasters. As you may suspect, we want to stimulate positive externalities and reduce the negative ones. To stimulate positive externalities, we can use, for example, subsidies. A subsidy is, in a sense, a reverse tax. The government gives a firm or a person money for doing something. For example, if you want to increase the externalities connected with healthcare, you can subsidize the universities to train more doctors or introduce healthy food to elementary schools. Subsidies can be used also to reduce negative externalities. If you, for example, subsidize a new heating system based on electricity, you will be able to reduce air pollution and related to it negative externalities such as deaths and illnesses. In some cases, it's more efficient to simply tax a negative externality. Most likely, we will have to tax the carbon footprint of products. The aim of this tax will be to decrease the amount of CO2 produced globally. We have already used in many places taxes effectively to drastically reduce the consumption of cigarettes. Currently, in Europe, around 80–90% of the shelf price of cigarettes are taxes and duties. This helped drastically reduce smoking. Another tool in the toolbox that can be used both for stimulating positive and reducing negative externalities are all sorts of regulations. They directly influence the problem we are trying to solve, and you don't have to rely on the goodwill of firms or people. An interesting example of such solutions is regulations in many cities in Europe that prevent cars with combustion engines from entering the city centers. A lighter version of such regulations you have in the food industry. For example, producers are compelled to show on the package of the product how many calories the product delivers. In this way, states try to motivate people to make better choices about their health. A similar approach was also used with cigarettes. The producers were forced to put ugly pictures on their products with the declaration of the harmful effects of those products. The final groups of solutions are the so-called market mechanisms. In short, you may try to create an artificial market that tries to use market mechanisms to price in the externalities. The biggest attempt using this group of tools has been tried in carbon emissions. In Europe, firms that produce carbon can buy the rights to emit a certain amount of carbon from other firms that are capturing the carbon. For example, if you are a gas-producing company, you can buy emission rights from a company producing trees. To sum up, externalities can be positive or negative. We want to stimulate the positive ones and reduce the negative ones. To do that, we will use a range of tools such as taxes, regulations, subsidies, and creating artificial markets.